There we have it covered. Hey, welcome. My name again, Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. And what I'm going to share with you today is why knowing your ICP is going to save you MHD. Well, what is MHD? MHD is very simply minutes, hours, and days. And hey, some of the content from this overview today comes from my book, A Mind for Sales. If you've not had a chance to pick it up and read it, I strongly suggest that you do, because not only do we talk about ICP, but we talk about a whole host of other things. But hey, right now specifically, what I want to share with you is some of the reasons why knowing your ICP is going to save you MHD, minutes, hours, and days. And hey, it comes out of our online program. We were named as one of the top 10 sales development programs in the world. Extremely honored by that. But right now, specifically, we're talking MHD, minutes, hours, and days. And when we talk about this, I want you to ask yourself the following question. I want you to answer the following questions. First question is, well, how many calls do you need to make to have a great conversation? Stop and think about this. I don't know of too many salespeople who wake up in the morning, day after day after day after day, and love beating their head against the wall, contacting people they have no clue whether or not they have a potential to buy. No clue as to whether or not they know anything about them. No clue as to knowing whether or not they can help them. You see, I know a lot of people, myself included, who wake up in the morning excited to talk to people I don't know, who I know I can help. Yes. You see, MHD is an outcome when you know your ICP. So how many calls do you need to make to get a great conversation? How many leads do you need to have to email before you get one to engage with? How many people are you playing social media games with and still having zero engagement? You see, one of the issues we have is that we think because we have a name, we have a lead. And we think because we have a lead, we have a prospect. We think because we have a prospect, we have a customer. Not even close. Those are not in a horizontal or vertical line by any means. They're not even connected. They are not even connected. Now, subsets of names, subsets of leads, subsets of prospects. But this is the challenge. What is the subset? Now, what I find very interesting is this. As low as our results might be in terms of the number of calls we have to make or the number of emails we have to spend, this is something that companies love to track. And what I find very interesting is, where's the ROI? Where's the return on investment? And what I find is this. In order for me to understand the ROI, I have to drill down to the granular level and look at it from an individual perspective, not from a macro perspective, but from a micro perspective, an individual perspective. And that's what I want to talk about right now. You see, stop and ask yourself this question. Could you answer each one of those questions and be able to understand how much time you actually spend? In other words, how much time do you spend before you have a meaningful conversation? Now, I'm not talking about what I'm not talking about is how much time do you spend for each individual call or each individual email, but how much time do you spend in total? Now, what I find very interesting is this. In fact, I was on a call this morning, having a meeting with some salespeople, and we were talking about the amount of time that they spend getting ready for each individual call. And it ranges between about 4 and 8 minutes. And they're tasked with X number of calls per day. And what they're doing is they're doing LinkedIn research, they're doing website research, and so forth. And depending on the industry, depending on who you're calling, that can be great. But what I want to do is this. I want to verify deeper as to whether or not that person is even worthy of research to begin with. What I find happening too often is that people will assume as leads, and marketing departments will assume as leads, as people who attended a webinar, people who sat in on this or sat in on that. No, that's not. Not even close. Not even close. Don't assume for a moment, just because somebody does something on your website or stops by your trade show booth or whatever, they are a valid prospect for you. No, they're just a name. At that point, they are just a name. And I can't stress this enough. You see, prospecting, like I said earlier, has to generate an ROI. But the problem is, how do I do that? I do that by narrowing who it is I'm going to be reaching out to. This is where the ICP comes into the MHD. I will reduce my amount of MHD when I increase my ICP. There is a direct correlation. I have seen this company after company, direct correlation between the amount of time people spend prospecting in non-productive activities and the quality of their ICP. The higher the quality of their ICP, the less wasted time they spend prospecting. And I've had people share with me this. They say, Mark, we don't have time to develop a real ICP. So we're just going to keep calling. We're going to keep calling. And I go, hold it. That's like saying, I'm going to cut down this tree, but I'm not going to bother to sharpen my saw. It might work for a tree or two, but very quickly your saw is going to become dull. Stephen Covey talks about that in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You see, the more time I spend sharpening the saw, the less time I'll actually spend cutting down the tree. Same thing. You see, this is where it comes back to, I have to ask myself, what do we really know about our leads? What do we know about our names? And more importantly, do we have a process that we can put them into a filter and begin filtering them out? This is why in my book, A Mind for Sales, I talk so much about the difference between MQL and SQL. MQL is marketing qualified leads and SQL is sales qualified leads. And let me tell you something. I'm going to call it out, marketing. I'm going to call you out right here. Marketing qualified leads many times are just simply anybody who participated in anything, because marketing is measured on the number of leads they throw over to sales, not on the quality of leads. Side note, you want to increase the quality of marketing leads? You have a measurement of marketing's performance based off the percentage of leads that actually close. That's how you increase the quality of marketing leads. You see, what I want to do is I want to have a very defined basis, with which I can determine who are my ideal customers. And of course, it starts by understanding who is your perfect customer today, by looking at who your current customers are. Now, for instance, in my own business, I primarily deal in B2B. B2B is where my sweet spot is. So you could sit there and say that a retailer might call me up and say, Mark, I want some sales help for my retail salespeople. And okay, wow, that's a lead. No, it's not a lead. It's not a lead because that's not in my sweet spot. See? And what happens is salespeople will run after that. I would run after that if I had no other leads to work. Oh, that's a bad move. Because now all I'm doing is being busy to be busy. We do not win awards for being busy just for the sake of being busy. Being busy must correlate directly to productivity, or we don't have an option. We don't have an out. Now, let's back this up a little bit. And I want to come back to those questions that I asked you to begin with, okay? The questions I asked you to begin with in terms of, how many calls do you need to have to make a great conversation? How many, leads do you have to email? How many social media conversations? What I want you to do is I want you to begin narrowing the focus. Now, there's 3 things that you have to keep in mind as you narrow the focus. And I go through this in my course, my ICP masterclass. 3 things you have to do. First of all, you have to understand who is your ideal customer profile. B, you have to understand the outcomes you create. And C, you have to understand your time. And what I want to do right now is I want to talk about your time. Because again, this is about maximizing your MHD. And let me give you an example. Company I'm working with right now out of Europe. Very interesting because they sell primarily to schools. This is who they sell to. This is their primary ICP. They know their ideal audience is higher level private schools throughout Europe and Asia. That's who they focus in. That's who they focus in on. And they even have it tightened up further by those that teach the British school system. And they even have it tightened up further. And I won't go into any further beyond that, but they know who their ICP is. And this is where their entire focus is. However, right now, those schools are all on holiday. They're out for summer vacation. So their ICP right now for about a 6-week period is universities, because university people do have the ability to be able to still answer the phone call, contact, they're engaged, they're making things happen. You see, your ICP is not just built around who your ideal customer profile is and the outcomes you create, but around your bandwidth. Now, in about 6 weeks, this organization will begin to move these university leads, prospects, because they're qualified prospects, over to the side. They'll keep working the ones that they're engaging with, but then they'll shift back to their primary ICP. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about matching your time up with the level. Now, let me take this a step further. I had a social media exchange last week with a person who was challenging me on the phone. They were saying the phone doesn't work and it doesn't make sense to call. And they get all of their business based off of referrals. That's how they build their business. And I go, that's great. That's fine. If you have enough places with which you can get your referrals from. And if referrals will generate enough prospects for you to be able to close. Now, if you only have to close 1 or 2 deals a month, we'll say, and you have a strong referral base out there, that can work. You see, your ICP can now be honed in even tighter. But this person was advocating that that's all anybody needs to do. It doesn't, because the time required doesn't match up. I've got to ask myself this question. How much time do I have, and where is my time? And build that back into my ICP. You see where I'm going with this? I may, depending on the number of deals I have to close, tolerate a wider ICP if what I'm selling is a low dollar value item that's frequently purchased. The less frequently an item is purchased, the higher the dollar value, and the more the item is not seen as a consumable, but as a capital expenditure, the tighter my ICP has to be. See what I'm saying? If what I'm selling is software systems and it's deemed as a capital expenditure, I'm going to have a very tight ICP. If also what I'm doing is having to educate versus convert, if I have to educate, I have to have it very tight, because it's got to be people that I can specifically educate. You see, what I'm saying here is very simply this. I want you to examine, and I want you to start the questions I asked you at the beginning. How many calls do you have to make before you get a meaningful conversation? How many emails do you have to send out before you get a meaningful engagement? And see, how many social media people are you playing games with? And I want you to look at that as a metric. Most companies measure that. But now what I want you to do is I want you to look at what is the total amount of time spent in those activities. Okay? This becomes your baseline. This becomes your base. And now what I want you to do is I want you to look at the sales that you have actually closed. Okay? Look at who those customers are. Look at who those people are. And match that up with your ideal customer profile. And again, I go through this I go through this whole thing in depth in the masterclass. Okay, where am I getting to? This is going to help me understand where do I need to spend my time. Because what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to come back up to the top of the sales pipeline, top of the funnel. And you're going to sit there and say, hey, wait a minute. I don't need to chase these. I don't need to chase these. I should not chase these. You see, when you have a tight ICP, you walk away from more things than you actually go after. Do you hear what I just said? When you have a tight ICP, you walk away from more things than you go after. Like I said, I may get a lead in my own business, somebody who's looking for something for, help retail people or help something in a B2C mode. It's not my sweet spot. I may not even choose to return the call. I may not even, I may return the call only to be able to refer them to somebody who can help them. But if I don't have time, I don't even do that. You see, ICP, ideal customer profile, the tighter it is, the more I save by MHD. Now, there's a host of things that you can go through in this. And again, I've got the online program, ICP Masterclass. I want you to check it out. We're named as one of the top 10 programs. And here's what you do. When you go to my website, thesaleshunter.com, you're going to see up at the top, University. Jump out to it. Here's the kind of the landing page, so to speak, for ideal customer profile. We also down below have various options, level 1, 2, and 3 because you can access a whole host of other programs. But here's what it's about. I firmly believe that you will increase the results you get and decrease your MHD. You see, here's what I found very interesting. The more I'm able to identify my ICP, here's what happens. And here's why we save MHD. The reason we save MHD is very simply this. We're able to ask better questions because we've been down this road before with this person. See, I'm still going to do the research. Oh, that's part of the ICP to know who this person is and their company and so forth. Because again, if they don't match up, I'm not going to call it. But see, what does that mean? It means my questions are going to be better. It means the outcomes I can help you with are going to be clearer because I've gone down this path before. I'm going to have more confidence in my conversation, which means I'm going to be able to ask deeper questions faster. And ultimately, I'm going to be able to have a shorter sales pipeline. I'm going to be able to have not a smaller sales pipeline, a shorter sales pipeline, because I'm able to move you through faster. What does that allow me to do? That allows me to come back and take another person up at the top of the funnel and begin pulling them down. You see how this works? When I'm moving at this pace, it's amazing what can happen. And ultimately what happens is I close more sales without a discount because the outcome I'm delivering is matching up perfectly to what that customer is looking for. Because here's the final piece. Final piece is this. When you know your ICP, you'll spend far less time focusing in on the product, and you'll spend more time focusing on the outcome. We close more sales. I don't even want you talking about your product or your service. It is about the outcome you create. And see, the problem is if you don't know your ICP, you don't know really what the ICP is, the outcomes you can create, you're left with just talking about the outcome. I mean, you're left just talking about the product. No wonder you're not successful. No wonder you're not closing sales. Understand your ICP. And again, I'm going to encourage you to grab the masterclass, the ICP masterclass. It's only $59. $59. That's it. We make this thing incredibly affordable. And I want you to jump into it. I want you to jump into it right now. Because if you jump into it now, here it is the first part of July, you're going to be able to participate in the bonus piece. But if you don't get it early enough here, you won't get the bonus piece. Hey, when you know your ICP, you save MHD. Go out to thesaleshunter.com. Up at the top, you're going to see University. Click that. It's going to take you to the page. And it's all right there for you. Hey, I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. This has been another brief, quick overview session, trying to give you some ideas, trying to give you some things to sink your teeth into. I'm Mark Hunter. Thanks so much.